I honestly believe we're probably the last generation of people to be like hand roll code. You can totally see where this is going. But it does, abstractions change. No one writes in assembly language. People wrote in different languages. It's just lift the abstraction. So it's like, it's just another tool to use.
Welcome to Tech Teams Today, where we talk with the people building and leading the engineering orgs behind today's most innovative companies. Today's guest is Will Ogden, CTO at TrustedHousesitters, where he leads a 60-person engineering team. You're going to learn how he thinks about the role of engineers in the age of AI, how they went from in-person to 100% remote and are not looking back, and why he thinks that tech for tech's sake is overrated. Before we dive in, if you wouldn't mind, do me a quick favor. Hit like and subscribe. It really helps me ensure that other engineering leaders find this episode, and it will make sure that you don't miss any future ones. But Will, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your team. Tell us a little bit more about how your team is structured right now and how that has changed over the past 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, okay. So we started with the Spotify model. So we've gone through the whole gamut of team structures. I mean, the business has been going 10 years. We're about 60 engineering, product and data heads at the minute. And we divide ourselves up into, we call them alliances. So very similar to like the Spotify tribe. So kind of verticals in the business that are kind of like aligned to specific business problems. And it's something that, when we started off as one or two squads, everything works fine. You get to 3 or 4 things that were working start to not work so well anymore. And you have to sort of add that extra, just enough bureaucracy, just enough administration, just enough coordination to get through. So we're aligned to, we have these 3 alliances. One of them is around, we're a marketplace business. So a big part is about driving brand awareness, driving acquisition, finding new people to join the marketplace. And then the other half is around member lifetime value. So like the core proposition, looking after the core product, looking after the core functionality, that thing that connects the kind of the owners and the sitters together. And then we have like an underpinning kind of platform alliance. So doing all the kind of things like MarTech, shared infrastructure, and developer enablement, AI, all this kind of stuff to help those other 2 alliances go faster.
Got it. And is that team mostly remote? Is it hybrid? Is it all in office? And what's behind that decision?
So we're a remote first business, completely remote first. So before the pandemic, we were office based, and then obviously like everyone else, the pandemic hit and we went remote first. And we've not looked back. I know that lots of businesses are sort of reverting to office, reverting to hybrid, but we lent into it a lot. Certainly through the pandemic, we started to hire. We're a UK-based business, but we've got FTEs in the UK, but we've also got some Brazilian engineers, some Portuguese engineers. Remote first, global.
Yeah, I think that's a common experience. Everyone who goes remote starts tapping into different talent pools, and then it's really hard to scale back after that. It's one thing to do RTO when you're Amazon and you have campuses all across the US and your employees are there, or even across the world. But if you're a startup and you have distributed teams, it's really difficult to go back. The same happened to Revello. We were remote with the pandemic, and exactly for the same reasons we haven't looked back.
Yeah, and it feels like it's the right, like for us, there was lots of questions and should we go back to hybrid, should we go back? But from a hiring perspective, it's been super helpful being remote. Like I think it's the number 1 or number 2 questions that applicants ask us about whether we're remote. Salary, remuneration, equity, that comes first, and then remote and flexibility comes second. So it's super important.
Yeah. And since you mentioned it, let's talk about hiring. Let's talk about talking to candidates. What are you seeing in the hiring market right now in terms of volume of applicants, quality, maybe even funky stuff like fake resumes, fake candidates, avatars doing interviews?
Yeah. So, I had a quick check on our app, our applicant tracking system. And for one of the last roles we hired for, which was a senior front-end engineer, we had 120 applicants. So it's like, we're like, not short of people applying, and generally good quality. And I think that's kind of we do get people who we're only hiring in the UK for FTEs. We do get a lot of people from all over the world applying still, even though you can clearly say we're only looking for UK FTEs. But the quality is high, and the people. I think it's like one. It's about the business. People like mission. They like what we're doing, and it's the remote that's really driving that. But yeah, we've had the pipeline is strong. We're hiring a lot at the minute. And we're having no trouble at all with talent. Lots of great people, lots of great experience coming from some of the bigger businesses to us. We're as a business, we're only 200 or so people, and we're finding people from bigger businesses who want to come into that scale-up phase, that growth stage, and they're excited by that. So yeah, we get the whole gamut of people from the kind of the Metas and the Spotifys and the Amazons coming down. Who always want to sort of do that whole startup scale up thing again and feel that kind of growth, which is great for us because we're at that inflection point where having people with a bit more of that big business experience is super helpful to help us on our sort of scale journey.
And you mentioned the volume has been great and the quality has been great as well, which are two things that don't usually come together. Have you adapted your hiring process to maintain quality over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a lot. I mean, now it's a lot more robust. I mean, going back, 2-3 years, we were doing, CV screening very much manually, different people doing it. Like we were doing tech tests, but a lot more lightweight. Now it's a lot more robust. We're using the ATS systems a lot more to kind of to screen. We're doing less technical tests. We've always hired, we've always been looking for people who are very product and commercial centric. So from an engineering perspective, always liking very commercial people who really understood the product, who weren't just sort of superstar, rockstar engineers. And so we did have a period where we did lots of tech tests and skills tests, but we backed off quite a lot of that. And it was much more around cultural fit. Are they a team player? We want the T-shaped people. And so our interviews were much more around people having good face-to-face chats, presenting, talking through business problems, which I think has really helped us, as opposed to like having people who were just on cheat on tech tests to get in. It was never about that for us. It was always the more well-rounded people, which I think is coming to sort of pay dividends a bit now for us.
I'm muted to avoid echo, but we'll cut that. And you mentioned a few skill sets, a few skills during your answer. And do you think those skills and experiences that matter today, they're the same that mattered in the past? I mean, you've changed your process with regards to technical skills, but it doesn't mean that you don't value them. It's just you're using different signals to screen for them. But are there skills that have changed, things that you didn't really care about before and now you do, or vice versa?
I think again, this is where it's like segues into the AI chat. I mean, what we're, going back 3-4 years, we'd have a cross-functional squad that was, you had a product designer, you had a product manager, you had a number of engineers doing sort of front end and back end, you had a QA. I think over the time we've started to see that those roles got a lot closer together, and that instead of being very separate disciplines, they ended up with people with a kind of an expertise, but they were able to start moving into each other's space. And so when we were looking for very product-centric engineers, of course they were the ones coding and pushing the changes and deploying to production, and the designers were doing the mock-ups. But over time now, we've started to see designers being able to create prototypes, being able to sort of start to submit PRs for doing front-end stuff. You've seen product managers being able to create prototypes and do design without the designers getting involved. Engineers being able to do the whole thing, being able to create stuff there. And I think that is what's changed. I think with the AI change coming in, it feels like all of those people are amalgamating into a single kind of like, I don't know, there's loads of like buzzwords. I'm not sure what the best one now is. Product engineer, some sort of product creator kind of role, where everyone is able to do everything. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's the right thing. Having people really close to the business problems and the customer problems to solve, and being enabled and empowered to be able to like ship features quickly without having to do this kind of waterfall process between all the different sort of functions in a squad is amazing. So it is changing. So I think, and that kind of leads into what we always hired for, was people who really understood the problems to solve, able to like collaborate, able to have great teamwork, able to solve problems. And it didn't really like the abstraction you use is changing now. Like you don't have to be hand rolling so much code, but it's still knowing the right problems to solve and being able to work as a team is the key things, and that hasn't changed.
Yeah, I think being close to the business problems, and I interviewed somebody the other day who actually said that they make their engineers sit in client meetings, sales meetings, just to hear the back and forth. I think that's important. But at the end of the day, if you're getting business people or product people amalgamating into this this new tech business persona, you still, at some point in the process, you still need true technical depth. Right, you're still integrating that into a system that you want to be scalable and secure and functional and context aware. So how do you do that? Because people can now cheat on that using AI in your process, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you need to. I mean, the abstractions are changing, right? So I guess the job for me at the minute, the job is becoming how do we create like platform tools and all the systems around it to enable people to be using these kind of AI tools, being able to build and ship things safely and like securely. So all the DevSecOps, all this kind of stuff that has to go into place. That's the key thing. And that's the kind of where everything's changing. It's about putting those like guardrails in, I suppose, into the platform to enable everyone to be able to do it. So that it doesn't matter if you've got a designer who doesn't know what they're doing. You'll have some tools that will capture that in the PR and the review process. It's an automated review stuff. Still having human eyes on these things, that's still important. But it's like, I feel like that's where it's changing. It's now about the tooling and the enablement. It's much more important now to then enable everyone else to be able to deliver at pace with these new tools, because the tools aren't slowing down. There'll be new tools all the time. You're right, like stuff that it gets pumped out of, LLM Copilot stuff isn't always safe. It needs to be checked, it needs to be validated, it needs to be secure. And so it's just about putting the guardrails in place for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that's a good segue into my next question. As a whole, how has AI adoption changed your day as an engineering leader, as a CTO?
A lot. And I definitely was not 18 months ago when ChatGPT launched. So I was like, this is novel and it's cool and it's like really interesting, but is it going to change the world? And I was like, well, I'm not so sure. Is it another kind of crypto-y thing? And then I think probably 7 or 8 months ago when all the, especially like the Anthropic models, the Sonnet models, they really started getting, when we were playing with it, asking, can you do this, linking it to a Jira ticket and saying, have a go at doing this. And it was getting close. And it was just, and then there was like, it did feel, so for us as a business over the last 6 months, our adoption is really like, we're almost every engineer is using Copilot. We see adoption is really high. The people who were, and again, with anything new, you get people who are like, on the vanguard, loving it and using it straight away. There's a few laggards who are less kind of like into it. But I think with the latest models now, it's been transformative, and I think it continues to be. I think that comes with, like we're saying, comes with problems, and it's like you do have to make sure, the security's there, the reviews are robust, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. But for me, it's been amazing, and it's helped us like really, we're like we're not a huge business, and we have to pick carefully what we invest in. And innovation is costly, and you have to place your bets on what you want to do. And what we're finding is with the prototyping tools, the coding tools, we can just accelerate and de-risk some of that stuff, so we can make bigger bets and we can play with more stuff. Whereas before we had to play safer, which ultimately is much better for our customers. So it's like, yeah, I've been really, I was definitely like a bit slow to be like, this is going to be amazing. And now I'm like this is changing how we work. And it's like, it's incredible. And I think it does feel like, yeah, it's a completely different place. And I honestly believe we're probably the last generation of people to be like hand roll code. You can totally see where this is going. But it does, abstractions change. No one writes in assembly language. People wrote in different languages. It's just lift the abstraction. So it's just another tool to use.
I love the talk about abstraction layers. It's I usually tell this story. My mom is a software engineer. She was trained in the 70s, and she used bunch cards. She looks at Python today. She doesn't recognize that as code. For her, it's closer to natural language than it is to her conception of what code is. It's definitely another abstraction, but one that deeply changes the role of the engineer, in my opinion. They're not the ones producing the instructions anymore. Well, they are, but they have a more of an architect type role to the system.
Yeah, right? I think so, and I think where I see the engineers who are having the most success with it are the ones that have a more holistic understanding of like the software stack and see how it all knits together. Yeah. I think it's so easy now to create a lot of code to do like a lot of stuff, and unless you've got a really good understanding of how it all links together, it's difficult. You're almost overloaded with like, it's produced like 20 files, everything's changed. Is it right? What's it doing? I don't know. I think you really do need to have a view of the whole system to help get the most value out of it. But when you do that, like I see the engineers who are already aware of how that stuff will work, they're the most prolific users and they're getting the most value from it.
In your previous answer, you said that you thought the early versions of ChatGPT were, a fun toy to play with, and then more recent versions of Claude, for example, are getting close. I hear that a lot, and I hear people saying that they get close, but it's not there yet. It's definitely not production grade, right? And in a sense, I think what that generates within teams is an environment where adoption is going up, but trust in those systems in those tools is still not there. What would it take for you to trust it? What would it take for you to, what's missing for it to be production grade in your point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. What do I think? I think for us, at the minute, it will pump out, you're using these tools, it's pumping out code, it creates loads of it, it documents it well, it looks like it's right, it will create, I see people creating test suites of their code, it pumps out tests, the tests are look great, they're everywhere. I think until we get to the point, I think we need to find out how best to use these tools. So I was thinking about this the other day, about maybe there's a case where we have to have different processes around creating test suites first, or hand rolling, and sort of decoupling these two things. So instead of it's like one agent that's doing everything, you're almost having one agent or yourself thinking about the tests and the acceptance criteria, and creating that what does correct look like first, and getting comfort with that. And then and only at that point can you then get the agent to do its stuff. And then you have your DevSecOps and all your kind of security stuff behind the scenes to look at it. It feels like it feels to me like the answer will be some process stuff on how best we leverage these to make production ready code, and then there'll be some tooling bits that need to do to close up some of the kind of security and other kind of risk areas. So it does, and that feels like 6 months ago, maybe I'd have said that we're miles away, but we're much closer than we are. So that won't be long before that happens. It feels like that's in another 6 months. We're going to be there.
Yeah, and I think those changes in workflows and in how we work, they're actually already happening. If I hear stories about junior engineers who started their careers coding with Copilots from day one, they start coding with a comment and not with int main, and that's wow. And do you think that what we initially saw as a crutch could actually be an advantage if we believe that changing the workflow is going to be something that we're going to need to do?
I think you're right. I think some of the times the examples I've seen are there's baggage that you have as a senior engineer with experience. It's you do stuff like you've always done it, and it's hard sometimes to get that change. And perhaps where if you're a junior coming into the industry and you've just got these AI tools, you won't have that, and you'll just be able to go bold. I mean, some of the challenges I was sort of tasked with the team is be really bold with what you're asking these AI agents to try and solve. It's not just an auto suggestion tool anymore. You can be really big. You give it context, and you can go. and that blows some of the engineers' minds. Like, the senior engineers who've been used to hand rolling things, doing line by line, but knowing it could do that. Whereas if you're a junior coming in, you don't know any different. You say you want to spin up a, whatever service to do X, Y, Z, and they'll do it in a single comment, and it goes and does it. They don't have that kind of concern, or that, they don't know what they don't know. So I think there is benefits. I think it is definitely like there'll be a trade-off. I do think it's a challenge for juniors coming in when you start using these tools that are pumping out huge. You see batch sizes of PRs. I think even since we've been using these tools, it gets bigger and bigger. Like, it creates more code and
documentation. By the way, everything's so well documented and commented. It's just like bigger, more stuff to read.
Yeah, 100% is much bigger. But when juniors, they were cut. Like, I remember when I started out, Stack Overflow came along, and we were cut and pasting snippets of code out of Stack Overflow. I didn't know what they did. Some of them, you're looking for like some sort of like hash function or some sort of you were just cut and paste it and hope for the best. And you were using, then NPM came along and open source, and you were using these like third-party libraries. You didn't know what was in them. You didn't know what they were doing. They would hope for the best. And this is just something similar to that, right? And it's just like, now we have security tools that look for supply chain things in third-party libraries. There'll be similar static analysis stuff that looks at problems of your LLM code. It's very new, but it's also the same as it's always been, just at a different scale and a different abstraction.
Yeah, even the flaws, like even the risks. Yep. I think that's what you're saying. It's not just the fact that it's an abstraction. The risks have not dramatically changed. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And all right, let's talk about your role a little bit. As a CTO, an engineering leader in general, everyone's navigating these changes. So you guys went remote with the pandemic, and then AI. Job market has had its up and downs. Seems like it's at a favorable spot for you guys right now, but I know it has been difficult for some companies. How have you had to adjust your leadership style through all of this?
So remote is very different from in person. That was the biggest change, like going from, where you're as a leader going into an office and being able to absorb by osmosis what's going on, being able to hear what's happening in your kind of like in the office, going and talking to people and picking up on stuff. And then you go remote and suddenly that goes, and you have to be, everything you're doing has to be super intentional. You have to know to go to who to talk to, who to pick up on, when to and the medium you use, you have to be really intentional. If you just start calling all hands meetings, it's so easy to waste people's time remote. You can just create masses of meetings with masses of people. Like, everything changed. It was really fun, really fundamental. But again, as a leader, I've had to sort of look at that and think about how to affect change differently, how to be intentional with communication, which communication's right, like when to use. We use Slack a lot, and the business is, hugely Slack orientated. But when to do in-person time. So we're a remote business, but we still value in-person time. So we do quarterly offsites with the whole business. So we get everyone together. We do 2-day events. So I think that, when we in the pandemic, we hired, as I said, we hired a team in Brazil. And they worked for us for a number of years before we flew them over to the UK. And then you meet them in person, and that in that first 5 minutes of meeting someone in like real life, it like completely changes your relationship with them. Like, it's just like, it's crazy. So like that, I love remote, and I think we're a productive remote business, and I think that's great, and it brings flexibility and quality of life and all that. But I do think there are still things where in person can really like build those bridges and build those relationships, and that's valuable too. And it's just like finding the balance there.
Yeah, what we've done to try and find that balance is make sure everyone's remote, but we're remote first. But we do have in-person opportunities for that contact to be built at least once a quarter or once every 6 months, so that people can, when they're in long meetings over Zoom, they can remember, oh, that's the person I was, rubbing shoulders with the other day at the offsite. So yeah, I think that goes a long way as well. What do you think defines a great engineering leader right now, compared to about 2 years ago or even before the pandemic?
I think somebody who can stay close to the changes that are happening, like it's, even outside of technology, things are changing, the world's rapidly changing. So I think it's just being like aware of the changes happening, being very close to, like I was saying, what's important in engineering and technical leadership is the same as what I felt with engineers and being product and customer centric and commercial. I think that has always been really important to me, to be able to go, like with the technology changing so quickly and with the abstractions changing so quickly, the important thing is like knowing the problems to solve and being commercial. And I think that is becoming more and more important as a technical leader. I think that, it ends up with the technology being a commodity and being, there'll be so many options out there. It's more, which is the right one to back? What's the right problem to solve? How do you get your people to have that same mindset, that curious mindset? How do you get your people aligned to the right problems to solve? All those kind of things. I do feel I love programming. I love coding. I always have done. But it becomes like it's so unimportant now when you've got all these tools available to you. It's much more like when you can spin up a prototype in 5 minutes to solve a problem. It's just knowing which problem to go for. That becomes the problem. So that's the key thing for me now in leadership.
That's a great answer. A lot of our viewers and listeners are individual contributors who are considering moving into leadership. In this time of very fast change, what's a piece of advice that you would give them as they think about making that jump?
I think I would. I don't think leadership, and certainly when there's leadership and people management are different, but I don't think it's for everybody. I think you have to really enjoy seeing other people and work and develop, and it's a very different thing. I found it very different moving for and I was a leader and a manager very early in my career. But it was very, very different, and it's equally rewarding, but it's very, very different. And I think it's great for people to move into management and leadership, but it's not everything. And I think you can do a lot as an IC, and you can work in a team. If you do want to go into leadership, then the key things that someone said to me once was, everybody is different, everyone needs different things, and you just have to work out what everyone needs in your team is different, and you have to be able to speak to them differently and motivate them differently. And that's something I've always tried to do.
Awesome. Let's move into our last section here. And I'll start with a tough question. If you had to share a contrarian take, something that you believe in and kind of goes against the grain of what's widely accepted as best practice, what do you think that would be?
A contrarian take. Well, I was, as a CTO, people sometimes think that, I should love technology. And actually, I'm not a huge lover of technology in that I like technology that is for, facilitates real life interaction, So I love tech. I'm very big into into cycling, into running, into things like the Garmins and the Stravas and all these kind of things that enable and augment the actual pursuit, the actual physical interaction, the actual real life event. And that's what I'm really big on. Technology for technology's sake isn't interesting. It's just a tool, and it's just something that can help enrich your lives, but it's not the everything. And I think people people find it funny when I talk, I haven't got all the latest home automation stuff. I like cooking and gardening and home brewing, cycling and running, and the technology stuff. I'm interested in those areas to help making those things more exciting, but it's not technology for technology's sake. I think that's something that's just constantly changing, and it's not the reason to do things. Use it to make your life better. Use it to augment those amazing experiences in your life, but it's not the thing. And I think that's my contrarian tech view.
I really like that. Quick fire round here to close. What's your favorite tool? I mean, what's a favorite tool that your team can't live without?
My favorite tool the team can't live without. I think at the minute, like Copilot is becoming like so useful. It's useful for like, as you know, for creating the code, but it's also for people to understand the code base. You know, you've seen people coming in, being able to ask questions of how something works, and having those people to help them with their onboarding, super valuable. And Notion, I think, you know, documentation is always key for this kind of stuff. So a combination of Notion and Copilot are probably the two key things we can't live without.
Great. What's the best leadership advice you've ever received?
You've got to make a decision. It's going to be right or wrong, but you've got to make a decision.
Awesome. I have one that's similar. It's there's no right or wrong decision. You just make a decision, then you make it right.
Exactly.
Facts. So I really like that. Yeah.
Sure.
How'd you guys end up with a team of engineers in Brazil if you're based in the UK?
It's a good question. So, in the pandemic, we were looking for it was an arms race to find engineers in 2020, 2021. Everyone was hiring, and we were looking at how we could augment our team outside the UK. We were based outside of London, which was already hard to hire people for. And we just, like, one of our non-exec directors was just connected to a Brazilian-based business who had been working. We're in the pet travel industry, and it was this person had been involved in a similar US-based pet business, and recommended this business to us. And then we just connected. And it just so happened their tech stack was exactly what we were using. The cultural fit was excellent. Everything just it just clicked. So we ended up using a Brazilian team, and it's been amazing. We've been using and working with them for 5 years, and it's been fabulous.
Awesome. And finally, how can our listeners follow you? Are you on Twitter, LinkedIn? How can they stay in touch?
Yeah, LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn.
All right. We'll make sure to post your profile address here on the show notes. All right. Great stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Will. This has been a great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Lucas. Amazing.
That was Will Ogden, CTO at TrustedHousesitters. If you found this episode helpful, follow Tech Teams Today wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating or comment with your favorite takeaway and share it with other engineering leaders who would get value from it. Tech Teams Today is brought to you by Revello. We help U.S. companies find, hire, and pay full-time engineers based in Latin America, vetted, time zone aligned, and ready to start shipping code. I'm Lucas Mendes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.